Welcome to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. My name is Dave Deacon. It is episode 105, so thank you for making your way back. While I have you here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on your streaming service so you will be the first to know when new Red Dirt Agronomy podcasts drop. We're coming to you from Dr. Jason Warren's research lab on the agronomy farm at Oklahoma State University. And in this episode, we invite Oklahoma State University Extension entomologist Dr. Tom Royer on to talk about insect pressure in winter wheat, and more specifically, mites. And he also talked about pests in the summer crops of corn and soybeans. If you're new to the podcast, I'll give you a quick introduction to the regulars. These are the golden tones of Oklahoma State University Precision Nutrient Management Specialist.
I'm about to move from the soybean, this sorghum conversation, get to soybean and move off. Oh no.
Dr. Brian Ernell. And in this corner, we have Oklahoma State University Extension Soil and Water Conservation Specialist.
I want to go back to this false chinch bug, if we don't mind. So the false chinch bug, it tell us about that, Tom, before I make any comments.
Dr. Jason Warren. And finally, we have the not really under the weather, just kind of a sore throat and doesn't speak that much in this episode, and Oklahoma State University Extension Cropping System Specialist.
I've heard a phrase that I think describes this situation, and I think it's ignorance is bliss. Just because you didn't know how to identify what was going on didn't mean they weren't there, Jason.
Dr. Josh Lofton. If you'd like to ask the group a question, then jump over to reddirtagronomy.com and leave a question there, or send an email directly to podcast@reddirtagronomy.com, and we will discuss your question on the podcast. So without further ado, let's dive in and get a quick introduction from Oklahoma State University Extension entomologist Dr. Tom Royer. You are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast.
Well, I have responsibilities in row crops, so I work with all the guys that are here today in one way or another. But so row crops and small grains, and right now we're focused on just making that small grains crop go. And I have gotten a lot of questions this spring about mites, and it's dry, and there's all kinds of things going on with the wheat, but a lot of mites have been showing up in different fields. And so we took this opportunity to try and evaluate some insecticide products because Lorsban is no longer available.
Right.
And dimethoate's the only thing that's registered for brown wheat mite, and if you look at the labels on all the other insecticides, they don't even mention mites in wheat at all. So we just took this opportunity to try and evaluate some products so that when I get asked a question of what should I use, I can at least say, I know these products work. The way the laws work, you can use an insecticide on a crop as long as it's registered on that crop. Within the low and the high range of application rates, but you're taking on the responsibility of it working on yourself because the company's not necessarily going to back it. So I just want to have some data so that when farmer asks me a question, I say, well, I know that these products work. At least they worked in our trials, so that's what we've been doing. And couple things happen. I guess dimethoate's really hard to come by right now because Lorsban can't be used and there's nothing else, and the other pyrethroid products are available, but it was still up in the air whether they worked or not. So we got some nice data this year on backs of an unfortunate situation of some of the growers here, that we were able to get some good data. We had 2 locations in the state that we put out trials.
Did you see much variation between those 2 locations?
Very much.
Really?
Yeah, we had one up in Goltry. Mm-hmm. We put the trial up there. The wheat was still prostrate, and when we sprayed it, we were getting about 50% kill on any of the products we used. We went down south where it already started jointing and going vertical, and we got about 85 to 90% control down.
Wow.
Just a huge difference. And it was just because of the exposure of the leaves and opening up the canopy and getting it to the ground. So, but at least we've got, we know that, most of the pyrethroid insecticides like a Lambda or a Mustang or any of those products will work pretty well. They work as good as dimethoates. So very, very happy about that. Later on today, I'm going to go up to Kay County, and I guess there's some wintergrain mites up there. We've been dealing mostly with brown wheat mite, but there's a producer called me. I'm going to go up and take a look at their field up there and see what's going on. So,
do the wintergrain mites come in at a different point than the brown mites, or
well, the wintergrain mites show up. They kind of show up at the same time, and I don't know. Most of the calls I've been getting are brown wheat mite. I don't know why wintergrain mite is showing up there, but the way he described them, it sounds. And he was looking at the fact sheet that we have put out on them. He said he thought that's what they were. So I want to just go up and confirm that. And he's showing it on the. He said that the biggest injuries on the backside of some of their terraces, where it's kind of dry. And
so I'm going to kind of slide up. So with our weather right now, Tom, how does the moisture conditions, the drought that we have, or the lack of moisture, or the heavy moisture, how does that influence what we might start seeing coming into, say, our summer crops? Is there any impact on summer cropped insects with the spring weather conditions?
Well, I gave up a long time trying to predict because I know that brown wheat mites like this dry weather. So, whatever we have going on this summer, we just got to be ready for. I'm hoping we get some rain before the summer crops start. I'm planning on going out to a lot of. I'm planning on going out and demonstrating our smartphone apps for sugarcane aphid this summer and go to some sorghum field days and stuff. And I hope there's some sorghum field days to go to. I don't know. I'll have to rely on Josh over here to plug me into some of those things.
It's got to be sorghum first.
I know.
How long into the spring can you treat the mites on the wheat? Are we getting late?
Right now, it sounds. I would say this is probably the time to treat. You just want to knock them back because what I've seen is that there's still immature mites getting hatched. When we looked at our control, we did a nice job of controlling the mites, except we weren't getting eggs. And so any mites that we were still seeing in the treated plots were newly hatched nymphs. And so obviously these products are not getting the eggs, but they're getting everything else.
Yeah. Well, so because I've never really noticed, I'm not a good wheat farmer, I have to admit. I'm just not good at growing wheat. But like on corn, I know we'll get hammered like in a dry year, irrigated corn. It just, if you don't treat it, hammers it.
Yeah.
So they like the dry weather, and that just makes their population explode.
Is it the brown mites on corn too, or is it a red?
Well, no.
It's the brown wheat mite is on our wheat, and it likes dry weather. It does. That's when it shows up. We see it, every time we kind of have a drought situation, we'll see them show up. But otherwise, they get hammered pretty well by the probably fungus diseases. That's the same thing that's kind of true with Banks grass mite and two-spotted spider mite in corn.
Yeah.
They like hot, dry weather.
Yeah.
And that's when they really it knocks back the funguses that are taking them out and knocking them back.
Oh, okay.
And so
Are there growth stages that mites have bigger impact on a crop than, are they worse? Is it worse to have them early, mid-vegetative, or late? If you get them in late, is it just not kind of a concern? Or?
Well, I think right now, anybody that's spraying and controlling the mites is at least giving their wheat a chance. Because if they're out there actively feeding right now, they're gonna slow things down. I don't think that, with the prices this year, they could probably justify having to spray twice, but I'm hoping they don't have to. I'm hoping they're just giving their wheat a chance now so they can, so that it can be strong. But one of the questions I got was whether these mites transmit diseases, virus disease, and I'm not aware that these particular mites transmit disease. It's wheat curl mite that does that. So, but I'm still getting questions about, well, the wheat doesn't look good. I don't see any mites anymore, but there's yellow tips and that kind of thing on it. That could be other things too. It's just always hard to diagnose anything that's possible when you start seeing in dry situations what the wheat's looking like right now.
Is the diagnostic lab pretty busy?
They are busy. Yes.
Are they?
Yeah, they are.
I've been getting a lot of emails to double checking things. So when they have to email a soil scientist, you know it's bad.
Yeah.
The diagnostic lab.
Asking about diseases and insects, and you don't want to ask.
Well, but it could, you could be mistaking them for fertility things. So
the diagnostic lab does a lot of contact. They'll contact myself, Hyland, Josh a lot of the times just to make sure that it's not another biotic stress.
Yeah.
Something that is maybe more agronomic or nutrient or herbicide and not a pathogen.
And for those of you out in the world that don't know, OSU has a diagnostic lab.
They
If
do.
You go and talk to your county educator.
Absolutely.
Then they can get you hooked up with sending a sample.
And we do training with our county educators every year to show them how to prepare samples and get them sent in so that we can do the best job of trying to diagnose what the problem is.
Is there a cost to that lab or?
It depends. I know it depends. I think sometimes they get them in for free, but I think if it's a commercial situation, they do charge because the stuff is expensive to.
Well,
run
that's
through.
what I'm shocked that it would be even close to free, but
Yeah.
because it's very. My father-in-law used it
Time-consuming
one
and-
time.
yeah.
I don't think he paid. I think he just sent it to the county.
I think a lot of times it is that way.
it's kind of crazy.
I was about to
really.
say, if it came through the county office, I was thinking it
Yeah.
was used. And that's
Yeah.
time consuming. I mean, what they do over there is really
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought you just told them that you knew Jason Warren, and then they got you.
Well,
in.
that could be too.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, I can't throw that around too much though. Then,
That's usually costs you double.
yeah. I have one more question, Tom, about the mites. So, and you and I had this conversation the other day. On the rotation, like if we're looking for mites, are we looking at continuous wheat ground? Or like, how does a rotation might potentially impact that? And along with that question, are these mites mobile? Will they move from field to field, or how does that work?
The only way they could possibly move from field to field is if they get up tall enough and the wind whips them around, because they don't have any wings. They can't fly. They're pretty small.
Wind and dry.
Yeah,
man.
like we might have occasionally in Oklahoma. But and the other thing is, at least with like the winter grain mite, I had to start trying to dig through the literature, and the only literature I could find where anybody's worked with the winter grain mite is in Australia, of all places. And the research shows that we talked about this the other day. If you were to rotate into canola, they don't live on canola. They live on continuous wheat, and they probably are even more protected if they're in continuous wheat that's not tilled.
Yeah.
So I've always been curious about what it would do to those populations if you put in a canola crop or even some other rotational crop in for a year, see if you can knock them back.
Yeah. Because they live in the dead crown, like under.
The winter grain mite, you have to really look for them. I always like to think of them as like a vampire because they don't like the sunlight.
Yeah.
So they are buried down into the crown during the day, and they come out at night and feed. The brown wheat mite is like the one that likes to go to the beach and sun themselves. They like it during the day, and they're up active as bright sunlight. So they're like totally different in terms of their behavior.
That's why they're so tan.
Yeah,
because they're out in the sun, enjoying the beach. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So does that impact spray time? Is it better to spray midday for the brown mite, or is it?
I'm just happy that I was able to get some efficacy data, but I think I would recommend if you're going to spray to try and put as much carrier as you can down to get it down, especially with the winter grain mite, get it down into the crown. And cover the foliage, because they will crawl up at night and feed, and that's when they would get exposed if they're not during the day.
So as part of that, do you need a rain event, moisture event around that time to really see the most effective use of that?
I would, I think if you happen to spray and then maybe a day or two later you got a little rainfall or precip, that would probably help. But sometimes we were lucky to get these tests out. As windy as it's been, there are days where there's no way we could spray.
Yeah,
there was just no way.
No.
And we just happened to hit a couple days where it wasn't very windy, and we got it down. And so
you can spray, Tom. It's just you can't confirm lines.
I wouldn't want
this
to report
plot versus this plot. We might have a border effect of about 50 to 80 feet.
That's right.
ODAF may have a problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, we've been even trying to do dry fertilizer in some of this wind, and if you don't have a lot of residue, those prills will just roll right across the ground.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah. So we were just, if you can get sprayed, do it. Especially this year with the price of wheat. I mean,
yeah,
if you're going to try and get grain, you'd want to protect it. One of the fields that we actually sprayed was grazed, and then it and the producer wasn't going to do anything with it, but I think he maybe had second thoughts about it when he saw it perking up after he got a little rain and it started looking good.
Yeah.
So that's really the winter crops. Moving forward into the summer crops, what do you see on the horizon as far as insect pressure? I know it's still pretty early. The seed's not even in the ground in a lot of cases, but what are you thinking?
I mean, when I'm thinking about sorghum, honestly, I'm thinking about if we have a dry summer, chinch bugs could be a real issue this summer, because they tend to do better in really hot, dry conditions too. So if we don't get some rain and moisture, I'm a little concerned about that.
We have a question from the crowd. Armyworm from last year or from last summer?
Armyworm from last summer? Well, they won't be here. The armyworms from last summer have been killed out, and the ones that we got this year will be coming up from down south, and that depends on what kind of summer weather we have. Last year we got some there's two strains of fall armyworm. One of them is, they call it the rice strain, and it overwinters kind of in the Florida area, and our weather patterns brought that up, and that's why we were seeing so much in yards last summer. The typical one that we get is what they call the corn strain, and that comes up from the Gulf Coast, and it doesn't necessarily like Bermuda grass and some of the grasses so much as it likes corn and sorghum and that kind of thing, and wheat. It'll come up and get wheat in the fall. So we'll just have to wait and see what we get for summer weather patterns to see what the South brings up, because it's a tropical insect. It doesn't survive here.
So the wind and the weather brings the moths up here?
Yes. Yeah, the wind and the weather brings the moths up. They start building up in the south, and then each generation kind of just marches forward. And so that's why they call it the fall armyworm, because probably up in the corn states in the Minnesota and Wisconsin and area, they see those late in the summer when they've moved up that far north.
We can't get Texas to stop it, and then that way we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. I wish we could.
Can we make some calls
border
on
on the Red River?
Yeah.
Wall on the Red River.
Yeah.
Well, it's like
a wall. Yeah.
It's always the aphid's always amazing, because it starts down there, like the sugarcane aphid.
Yes. Yeah.
And it comes up here.
Yeah.
And through IPM and genetics and all that stuff, they've really knocked that back, right?
Yeah.
Or do you think we just haven't had a year where we've had aphid?
I think if we were to figure out some way to look at what growers are planting, I think the resistant varieties have had a huge effect.
So we can't do that with armyworm.
Nope.
damn it.
So bollworm, same thing on the cotton crop. It comes in from the south and works.
Yeah,
up.
bollworms are a little different. They you'll get some overwintering here in Oklahoma, but then you get the combination of them building up plus what we already have here.
Have you done much with corn pests? Because corn's going in the ground right now, so corn planting is pretty heavy. So rootworm or wireworm, cutworm.
Cutworms are easy to control as long as you just make sure you get your product down there in the furrow, like a T-band or some kind of application like that. They're pretty easy to control. Rootworms, we don't have to deal with them anywhere like in K County, in the downstate, and up in the Panhandle they do, but I don't get up there to do much corn work anymore.
So what's the difference in the two areas? Do you think
there's just more continuous corn up there, and that you got the Panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma and western Kansas. There's just a lot more corn growing over there, and so they have to deal with mites and they have to deal with rootworm if they're they don't rotate.
The taps deal, the growers on the taps, they always ask what the rotation is. And I got a lot of stuff going on, so I haven't ever really had the chance to study all the different genetics. But like when I tell them I'm rotated with wheat, they said, oh, well, then use this hybrid. But if not, if it's continuous corn, it's a different one because there's different genetics that will protect against that, or seed treatments and stuff like that.
Yeah, the seed treatments plus their genetics are geared towards controlling rootworm pressure. And the biggest problem with that is they've relied so much on the genetics that rootworms are starting to overcome that.
That's what I was about to say. I was kind of hearing chatter about the rootworm genetics breaking.
It is.
Also, the same long lines as the Bollgard breaking or potentially breaking. Same thing on that.
It's the same situation whether you're looking at Roundup Ready or when you rely on one method over a long area, year after year after year. Mother Nature figures out a way to get around it.
So, is there anything? Is everything else we're hearing, all the product? So, is there any guidance you'd have to somebody going in with a summer crop right now, as far as planning to pre-buy or have certain insecticides on hand? Because what you hear now is get your plan, at least get your herbicide plan. That if you know you're going to do corn, or know you're going to do sorghum, you should probably have your herbicide planned out well before you plant because you need to put the order in. Have you heard, is that the same thing with the insecticide, or how do you deal with something that, for me, insecticide is much more of a reactionary?
It is, and I can tell, all I can tell you is this: anybody that bought Lorsban stored up, in the past when they would cancel a registration, they'd say you can use existing product all the way through, but they canceled the tolerance. So I've talked to several producers that go, I got Lorsban in my, stored away, and it's like, I can't use it. They're just stuck with it.
Yeah.
And there's no buyback.
I bet they're stuck with it. There's not going to be any Lorsban applied.
But legally they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the it's kind of sad. I mean, they were trying to do a good job of planning ahead and using it, and this particular situation, they just pulled the tolerance. So that means if a corn crop comes in with Lorsban on it at all, it's rejected.
It's rejected.
Dang.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it has zero tolerance for chlorpyrifos, anything going forward.
And is it, you see in the future, is it just off the shelf? We're never going to see Lorsban again?
Lorsban is not off the shelf for non-food uses, but for any food crop. I've talked to Kevin Shelton, some of those guys that work with pesticides. They said you can forget it. They're never gonna bring it back for food crops.
So it's a residual in the food problem.
Yeah, there were some issues with children and neurological issues, and they'd been pushing it for a long time to get rid of it, and it happened finally.
Yeah.
So just briefly, whenever they do take an herbicide, pesticide off the market, just kind of walk us through how that works. They they've done research on it, and then the government says,
I believe what happens a lot of times is that products have to be re-registered periodically, and I don't know whether 10 or 15 years or whatever, and then they want to review new data and new situations. And with chlorpyrifos, they've been fighting that for years, but there's been a lot of evidence that it was causing some issues with children in their, maybe, I don't know, but they finally just pushed EPA had kind of delayed making any decision, and they finally just brought some legal action to bear on EPA and said, you need to make a decision, and that's what they did. Typically, either the company will decide to not re-register because it's not, going to make money for them, or they'll say no re-registration, but existing products can be used according to label. In this situation, they remove the tolerance. So once the tolerance is gone, that means it is not allowed on those crops at all. No residue.
Where's that grain at what point in supply chain is grain tested for that?
I don't know.
Okay.
You don't want to find out, though.
I don't really.
I mean, if you're a grower, you don't want to.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss.
If it's on a barge, then you're
the whole.
Of course, yeah. Or as a supplier of grain.
That's what I was wondering. It's like, man, is it? Yeah, I can't imagine them testing every load, but at some point it's going to be tested. So that means that's a lot of. If you catch one kernel of corn,
what about if say it's feed corn?
Now here's what the deal is with it. Well, it's still considered a food product, but what the deal is if a producer could prove that they applied the product before March 1st, it's okay.
It's okay.
But after if they can't prove that they applied it before that tolerance was removed,
so it's kind of a wishy-washy right now. But I mean, that's kind of a wishy-washy deal.
Well, because everybody has to keep records, so if they have to prove that they applied it before March 1st.
So how did that differ from what happened? Wasn't it Enlist? Which one was?
Oh, gosh.
So the process of Lorsban and the process of Enlist, I believe, were a little bit different.
Very different.
Can you kind of walk?
Well, this is my understanding about Enlist. They were trying to get data to make a decision on where they were going to restrict its use area-wise. But the deadline was coming down to make a decision. And so from what I understand, in Oklahoma and in Nebraska, there's a couple of places where American burying beetle is still around. Mm-hmm. And so they saw where that was, and they just blew up a bunch of other counties around that and said you can't use this product in that area. Or in Nebraska, same thing. They've got a pocket of...
In Arkansas was a different insect, or was Arkansas the same?
It was just that
eastern border.
Okay.
But there was I don't know, almost half the state of Oklahoma said you couldn't use it. And there was a big area in Nebraska right in the middle of Sandhill country where you couldn't use it. And then last week, they've revised their situation and they took out a lot of counties. Because, Payne County was listed as you couldn't use Enlist.
Yeah.
And it's I don't think there's any American burying beetle even close to here, or K County or Osage County.
So was there data, and I kind of checked I asked Hoback because I was talking, but you might know better. Was there data showing the influence of what that chemistry was doing to the American burying beetle, or is this conjecture?
I don't believe there was at all.
Okay.
Is it just...
That's where I'm trying.
Pick the bug.
It's endangered, and pesticides and endangered. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know why a herbicide would, I don't know why it would affect.
I didn't know if there was some papers out talking about the.
I don't think so, and I don't think Dr. Hobbit got contacted at all about what areas of Oklahoma.
When I spoke with him, he didn't get contacted at all about anything.
Yeah.
He found out when everybody else found out that there was an issue with this, and so he was slightly surprised and was unsure of the connection between. Because I contacted him, I was like, okay, is this about a drift? Is this about residue? Is this about, where would the beetle come in contact with? Well, he said, well, in a tilled ground, in cultivated ground, you wouldn't have the American burying beetle.
Right.
Maybe in no-till. So he kind of walked through and said, the step-by-step wasn't very logical to him.
Right. But I just looked at the map of the United States of where it wasn't allowed, and it's like, it was like Oklahoma and Nebraska. And then every place else it was kind of okay. There's a few counties here and there. Even like in Texas, there was a few counties in Texas. And I think there was another endangered species they were concerned about there. But there was this big pocket in Oklahoma and Nebraska, and then the rest of the country was kind of fine.
Yeah.
Is that just for the Enlist formulation, or is that for, because Enlist is 2,4-D, right?
Yes.
So,
I think so, yeah.
Is it all 2,4-D or just the Enlist formulation of it?
It wasn't all 2,4-D. It was just the Enlist.
But the Enlist was the one up for re-registration. So
Right.
does that mean other 2,4-D formulations, if when they come up for re-registration, will have the same issue?
I don't know.
Don't know.
And the funny thing is there's the dicamba type too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was fine. So, I talked to the people that, what are the products with dicamba? They're
Extend.
Extend. The people that were marketing Extend were just perfectly fine with it.
But they were really fine that Enlist was
Enlist wasn't going to be a competition with them.
Because what all is Enlist on? Cotton and beans?
Cotton, beans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I think what happened was they just got a data crunch, and they had to make a decision, so they slapped it down, and then they've modified it since then.
Yeah.
So, Tom, we talked a little bit about resistance earlier. We know a lot about weed resistance. We talk about it all the time. Is there a different mechanism for insect resistance to weed resistance? Is it
The process is the same.
so
You're
the exact same?
selecting for those few individuals that survive, and the genetics expands because they're surviving and mating and reproducing, and all of a sudden you've got a situation where you've got a resistant population, just like with weeds.
So with weeds, we talk about like rotating, chemistries and mode of actions and stuff like that. For something like BT, that is there at what's the best way for a corn producer, cotton producer that is a more continuous? How do you rotate that mode of action, if you will?
That mode of action is rotated through planting areas that don't have the gene in it. Refuge, they call it refuge. That is what all of the entomologists that really worked with that product decided was the best way to manage resistance. You're not selecting for that whole population. You're letting a refuge area where you have a better mix of genetics.
Was there a difference? Because it used to be refuge was a area that you would lose an acre to. Was it improved when we have refuge in the bag and now the individual plants, or was it same?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
I don't know. I think that they've got the people that study resistance have done computer modeling to figure out whether it was going to work or not. But I was always a little, I guess, skeptical about having just individual plants that don't have the trait mixed in with a bunch of plants that do. But I always thought it would be better to I'm just saying in logic, it would be better to have an area that you just let things go.
And speaking of that, we will go ahead and take a break, and we'll catch back up with Dr. Tom Royer after the break. You are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. That's a lot to take in about mites and how to treat them, along with other winter pests, from Dr. Tom Royer. He is an Oklahoma State University Extension entomologist. And for more information about what the doctors talked about, you can find it at reddirtagronomy.com. And if you have a question for the group, send an email to podcast@reddirtagronomy.com or send us a tweet. Our handle is reddirtag on the Twitter sphere. Coming up in a few minutes, we're talking about chinch bugs, both true and false, and you are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. So that was a really good discussion about many of the insects there, but there is a lot of questions about the different bugs right now, the chinch bugs and others. Where are we with that?
Dave, we call them pests for scientists around here.
I'm sorry.
Not
See,
bugs.
See, again, it's 4 scientists and Dave, and so Dave asks the questions. He asks them wrong, and he's always corrected by the scientists. So it's always great. And whenever I'm update Tom here, but whenever we were trying to come up with a name for the podcast, we had several, and then after we came up with Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast, I said, what if we were to call it 3 Scientists and Dave? Because, I mean, these guys know what they're talking about, and I just push the buttons and make sure the audio levels are where they're at. So
we just appreciate you think we know what we're talking about.
The only way we would have done that is if we would have done a full calendar shoot with lab coats and everything. I know. That would have been it. Jason.
You're stupid. It could be Dave and 3 allegedly smart.
There we go. I like that. That also. So we'll let Dr. Josh Lofton ask the appropriate question about the insects, the pests.
That's a lot of pressure now. Well, you said a little bit ago that you were concerned with chinch bugs this year being an issue. 1, why? And 2, like, where do they follow? Do they follow a similar pattern like we do the armyworms, or are they one that does overwinter here typically?
Yeah, chinch bugs overwinter here, and they are oftentimes held in check by fungus disease. There's a fungus disease that really hits them, and when it gets dry and there's no moisture and hot, fungus doesn't do very well and doesn't spread very well with them, and they do better. But they overwinter. They'll overwinter in wheat fields. You can find them in wheat fields, but they'll also overwinter in bunch grasses and stuff. But they're here all winter. And then what I've seen happen, a typical pattern is that they'll move in. They'll move from wheat into another crop. But sorghum is just, they'll move into corn and sorghum, but sorghum's pretty sensitive to them.
Yeah, so one of the big things that we've always heard is it's difficult to control them. So if you have them, the question has always been, should you even make that application? Because how much yield potential damage do they have? And then what are some things that you can do to help control them? Because they live in the sheath, like
they live in the sheath or in the cracks on the ground at the roots, and it's really hard to get a hold of them. And then they're laying their eggs in the sheath and they're hatching. Once the sorghum's pretty tall, 3-4 feet tall, it's really hard to control them, especially if the sorghum's not planted in rows. But a little earlier, you can use directed sprays to direct the spray at the base of the plant along with the top, and you can get pretty good control early. But later on, as they start building up, it gets harder and harder to control them.
Because actually, if the bugs are out, they're pretty easy to control. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
You just have to get them in.
You just have to get the insecticide to them.
Are they at daytime or nighttime or just whenever they want to?
Anytime. They're there all the time.
They like to party every night and every day.
Can we mute him?
They want to rock and roll.
There you go.
So, like carrier volume, I mean, will that help later in the year?
I think. And if I was to talk to a producer that wanted to try and control chinch bugs, I'd say try and put in as much product as you can, and probably ground rig is your best shot. The same kind of deal where you've got drop nozzles that are going at the base of the plant, because that's kind of where they hang out a lot
Yeah.
of times, right at the base of the plant.
Because most of the time it's just pyrethroids, right, that we'll go focus on. And
Yeah.
so once it does get, if you have, like, let's say booted sorghum, how much yield impact is that from a direct, I guess from a directly, and then we can also talk about indirectly from, lodging of the crop and all that.
Yeah, it's really hard to find data that shows their direct impact, but just the fact that they're there and feeding constantly, logic says they're impacting yield. There's just no doubt about it. They're impacting they're feeding on the plant. It's reacting to their saliva, so the plant itself is reacting to that injury. Means it's devoting resources away from trying to produce grain to just protect itself, and so logic says that it's causing problems. I just don't know how much.
Yeah.
So it comes in from the wheat. When in the physiological stages of wheat would it move out of the wheat? Like once it starts
drying down.
So you're talking about late May.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to plant milo in a couple weeks, then that milo it's still not going to be that big, right?
Right.
By the end of May, what would it be, a 12-inch plant?
Yeah, that's usually where we've got it, and why we typically have trouble with it, especially in some of our plots, but also some early planted milo, is because it comes in at that transitional stage that it makes it from an easy to control to a hard to control, and then they can build up by the time you get boot, especially in a good year where you get a really big plant. They can just explode seemingly. And so I guess what's the difference in true versus false chinch bugs and damage, or is it just pretty much all the same?
Oh, true chinch bugs cause worse injury on the sorghum than false, and the false chinch bugs aren't actually coming out of wheat. They're probably coming out of mustards and things like that. That's what they actually prefer. But we see them getting into sorghum. They love the heads, and they'll suck once that plant heads with false chinch bug, they're sucking the moisture out of there. That's probably causing some seed flower abortion and that kind of thing. But they're just looking for something for water and any kind of nutrient. Yeah, the false chinch bug.
So I want to kind of dig into this because I've had some issues with the false chinch bug, but I want to go back to the chinch bug. So it's coming out of wheat. Will it come out of canola? Because years ago we planted double crop milo into canola stalks, and something went in and just wiped them out. Would that have been chinch bugs or something else?
Chinch bugs considered really to be more of a grass feeder, and
okay, so
false chinch bugs love canola.
Don't you remember the false chinch bugs leaving the canola fields and FedEx having a wreck over there off the road because
they
the
love
oil slicks?
Yeah, false chinch bugs love canola and mustards and things like that.
But on the chinch bugs, we want to start looking at populations, as they come out of the wheat the end of May, and then monitor those right up until boot, and because we got to control it prior to those plants getting big.
I've always found it very difficult to scout for chinch bugs because
it is
the way I always find it is a leaf and a collar joint that starts yellowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And by that point in time, the population's already really big. Mm-hmm. Because if they're causing that much damage, then it's really, really, really large populations typically. The other thing is that if we get a little taller sorghum, we get a little windstorm come through, and you get some that lean a little bit or snap, more than likely you go over to the collar and there's some chinch bugs there because they'll just dry out that node region, and it's a weak point in a windstorm. So that unless you we've had Brent Rendell send us a video up in northeast Oklahoma from canola going to beans that had such high populations that he was seeing them walk across the roads. So
they do.
So I think if you found them there, but like starting with a small population and building up, that's just really hard to scout for.
Yeah,
it is.
I'm going to go back to that wheat crop. because the control is the natural control is fungal. Does the use of flagleaf fungicides and late season fungicides have any negative impact on the biological control?
That's a good question. I know that there's been some work in the past that I've looked at, not necessarily with chinch bug, but where they looked at fungicide applications for mites, because mites also get a lot of diseases, and it showed some suppression of the fungus that what might spread through a population.
I know it'd be for me. It's kind of like that grasshopper stuff we're talking about. It's like we spray for flagleaf fungicides when we have high moisture, high humidity, good yields, not hot and dry, and so you're already in that scenario where you're going to have high fungal. But if it's in today's climate, it's hot, dry. I'm questioning whether I'm going to spend a whole lot of money on fungicides right now because I don't see a whole lot of fungals growing at 0% moisture. Yeah. But then you don't have the natural presence anyway. So it's like the grasshoppers, where they said the grasshoppers. What was that we talked about? So the grasshoppers were down because of lack of, or summers are getting hotter or something like that. You remember that? What was that correlation they?
Oh,
they
yeah,
drew
there was a
grasshoppers?
neat study that was published. It was interesting.
Another scientific term. Interesting.
Yeah.
It was they had metadata. They had like 10 to 15 years of data looking at production in the tall grass prairie with these grasshoppers, and they showed that what was it? Under dry conditions, you have shorter, less forage, but it's more concentrated with grasshoppers. It's also the forage has better nutrient value.
Nutrients. Yeah,
I read that. I don't know how that paper come across my desk, but I read that too.
Yeah,
and it was one of those that we had. No, yeah, it was this and that. But when we had the climate we had bigger grasslands. When the grasslands were producing more, we had a nutrient dilution, so therefore the grasshoppers weren't doing so well. And for me, this was this correlation causation thing. It's like, I don't expect grasshoppers when we have really good, wet, high growth. They said we didn't have grasshoppers because we had good growth and dilution of the nutrients. When I would say that, and when we had poor growth and high nutrients, we had better grasshoppers. Well, grasshoppers are hot and dry. Reproduction is better. It's quicker than when it's really cool and moist. And so it's like, okay, they're drawing conclusions. They were talking about having us on the radio or on the thing. I gave them my opinion. I wasn't asked to participate.
Who sent that? Because somebody sent me that paper, and it was a discussion about nutrient density. I can't remember who sent it to me. And I found it fascinating, like you. Because at first, when I saw like the email, it was nutrient density, and there's a lot of discussion about nutrient density in the human food chain and how high yielding, commodities and all these things have diluted the. And I thought that's what it was about, and then I read it, and it was about freaking grasshoppers. But it was still interesting.
It was, and I, they did talk to me about it, but I was parsing that paper enough, saying, well, this could be part of it, but there's probably other things. They ended up not using me either.
Maybe they sent all of us the email. I can't remember.
Well, I think it was because it's one of those, well, on the one hand, it could be partially this, but there could be these other things. And it seemed to me like they were maybe more focused on really grabbing onto that one part of it.
So I guess I'll take that same idea and the concept of, there's been a lot of products that have come out that have said, hey, if you're a healthier plant, you'll get less pests. So is there value to that, or is it kind of a, there could be so many other things influencing that?
Well, I think that the basic understanding is that if you have a healthy plant, it's capable of fighting off infestations of a lot of the insects or pests that we have take advantage of, just like any predator. They take advantage of the weak and the sick. and that's how it gets started. So we always encourage with IPM is saying make sure your plants are healthy first, and they got adequate water, they got adequate fertility, and everything else. If you set the stage for healthy plants, they're going to be more capable of fighting off pests.
And just better able to, if you have a low-level infestation, just to keep chugging on without any yield detriment.
Yeah.
I want to go back to this false chinch bug. If you don't mind. So
Let's set this timer. We're going to be going for a while.
So the false chinch bug, it tell us about that, Tom, before I make any comments. The difference between it and a
This is
true
Jason
chinch
realizing
bug.
he's about to step into a public.
Well, because I've had some issues with these false chinch bugs, and they're a fascinating insect based on my observation and experience. Because they come in to the fields like what I would call in swarms, and then move
they
around
do. You're
the
right.
field.
I mean, I've seen them when they hit sorghum, which I don't think that they typically like, but when they hit it, I mean, it's massive. They'll be on a head, and you'll find thousands.
Yes.
And you come up and disturb them, and they fly in your face and get in your nose and get in your ears, and it's crazy. And I think they're searching for water more than anything else. I mean, because I don't think sorghum's typically one of their main host plants that they like. They like mustards and things like that. That's what they
really.
Yeah, that's what they can reproduce most effectively on. But in the summertime, where's the mustards?
Yeah, they don't grow in the summertime.
All right.
Not that I know of.
Well, and so
there's probably some other plants that they hit too, but
I think it's interesting because when we talk about, me and you have talked a lot of summers about true and false chinch bugs. It's like, oh, we got some chinch bugs, and we talk about, well, are they true or are they false? And it's like, what county are they in? Oh, I think it's Grant County typically has this abnormally high amount of true chinch bugs.
Right.
Why is it so focused on like?
I wish I could explain that, but if I look at old publications where they talk about chinch bug and they show Kansas and Oklahoma, they always delineated an area where chinch bugs were a problem in Kansas, and it was like a finger that came down into part of Oklahoma. I don't know, and when I talk to people, if you go out where they're growing in Woodward, where they're growing sorghum, they don't have much of a problem with them out there. It's I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, because like sometimes Josh Bashong will call and I got a chinch bug problem. Well, is it true or false? Well, it's in Grant County, so it's probably true. And it ends up being right, but I don't know why it is that like, oh, it's in Grant County, so it's probably true.
And anytime I worked with Kokenhauer, when he'd put out trials in Grant County, that's where we had our chinch bug problems. And we tried to put out some insecticide trials in there occasionally, and didn't always work out. But man, that's where we could count on them being.
I can get you some stuff. I can get you some locations in Grant County. Because I've never noticed, because that's where my little patch of ground is, and I've never noticed the true chinch bugs, but the false chinch bugs coming in around the tail end of July, as like after we've headed and flowered, and we're transitioning from green heads to coloring up. You'll walk the field or just walk around, and you'll see dark patches.
Yes.
In fact, if you get if you stand up on top of your four-wheeler and you look across the field, you'll see a dark patch. It looks like a cloud a shadow from a cloud.
Yeah.
You go out there, and every head on the perimeter of that dark patch is covered with these damn bugs.
Yeah.
And then you wait a week, and it will have moved. And the first year I noticed this, I didn't do anything about it. And every semi-load of Milo that went to the elevator was covered in like a black-gray mold.
Oh, yeah.
Which I assume was the honeydew or whatever. I guess it's not honeydew.
It would be.
But it was some kind of sugary substance those bugs left behind. And it didn't get docked or anything. And it was decent, like 60 bushel Milo or something. But it was just a weird deal. That's why I wanted to ask about it. And then the next year I went out and I actually spot sprayed them. and I don't know if it did any good or not, because like every time you go out there, they'd leave behind this black area, and then they'd move to another place. And it almost seemed like they were following the maturity of the Milo,
Interesting.
I don't know.
Do you know what? That sounds like a real opportunity for someone that knows how to fly drones and take pictures.
Aren't all.
Yeah.
And fly over and map the movement over the course of a few weeks to see where they move and how they move.
We could do that.
Yeah.
Give me the money.
So
But I still don't know how much yield
I don't
take.
that yeah.
But it sure it sure as hell seems like it. I mean, because it's
Well, don't you have yield monitors on your combine there, Warren?
meh. But you'd have to go out. I'd have to get somebody out there with a freaking drone, Brian,
Well,
to map the freaking spots, and then I could correlate it with my yield map.
I'll train you how to fly
Brian.
the freaking drone, Jason. You can take it out there.
And then we'd have to geo-reference the pictures. It'd be exhausting.
I've got the people for that. We can do that.
So talking about other head feeding,
There
we have midge?
Typically not, because of how things are planted up here. The sorghum's planted uniformly enough. The only time I've seen a real serious midge problem, this is back when I was working with Kokenhauer, and we planted a month later in a big field of sorghum. Mm-hmm. We planted ours a month later because we wanted to do some. I think we wanted to do some chinch bug work, maybe, but we came out and we're looking for grain, and the midge had taken everything because they'd hatched out from all of that earlier planted milo, and the only thing that was left was our little patch of late planted sorghum. So they're out there, they're here, but we don't ever have the kind of issues that they have in Texas and Louisiana.
Actually, there's been a lot of growers call and say, hey, we depend so much on tillers, and some years we have really bad, first and second tillers. Do you think it's midge? I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense, because you know what, first tiller can be about 3 weeks behind that main stem. So, if the conditions are right and we have the pest, that it's never a main stem issue, but potentially a tiller issue. And I mean, we depend so much on tillers in the state.
That sounds like a good graduate student project to me.
If only we had somebody to map out that movement through the year.
I have thoughts in my head right now. I'm about to move from the soybean. This sorghum conversation
I
gets to
want to
soybean
point
and move
something
off.
out here,
Oh no,
Tom.
Yeah.
Is so. I don't know. Lofton's been here 6 years or so, and prior to him coming here,
everything was great.
And I've made this comment publicly before, and I'm going to make it now. But prior to him coming here, I don't remember having any bug problems in my life. But I think the guy, he brought all this crap up in the collar of his jeans or something, and spread it all over, because now we got all these bugs.
I've heard.
Can we blame it on Josh?
I've heard.
I'd rather blame it on Kokenauer. We've dropped his name 3 times already. So
I've heard a phrase that I think describes this situation, and I think it's ignorance is bliss.
Well, yeah.
Just because you didn't know how to identify what was going on didn't mean they weren't there, Jason.
Well, Tom's always been here to tell me what the bug was, but you're the one that spread the crap around.
I have some pictures of sorghum in Ottawa County that were taken in about 1999 or 2000. 1/3 of the field was wiped out from chinch bugs that moved in from a wheat field across the road, and that was in Ottawa County. I just couldn't believe it.
So you're saying it's not Josh?
It's not Josh.
Oh, damn it.
He was probably not even
it's
born.
from the Rendells.
He probably wasn't even born back then,
99.
So now Tom just blamed Brent and Zach Rendell from Ottawa County, so it's their fault.
One thing that I've often wondered, seriously, I like giving Lofton a crap, and I think he probably has something to do with it. But what's interesting is when I left Oklahoma in 2001, you drive Highway 412 from here to Woodward, and you didn't see anything but wheat. And now there's milo and beans and corn and wheat. And I wonder if there wasn't and cotton. But would there have been a time of bliss where we're bringing those crops in the mid 2000, 2010, where we just didn't have the population of those crops in some of these counties, and so now the pests have finally
They hadn't caught up yet.
Yeah. I like to give Lofton a bunch of crap, but I think, is there some truth to that now we're dealing with?
So
all
who's
these pests
responsible
'cause
for encouraging the diversity of crops, going from just wheat to everything else?
I think it's the guy who's.
Is that an
I
economist
think that's
problem?
the guys who blog post says everything but wheat.
So it is Josh's fault.
Josh's fault. See, you're right all along.
I know. See, I have logic. There's stuff rattling around that makes lots of sense once I get it out. And Brian
I actually
helps
have an
me
entomology
formulate
question if you're done
Okay,
with the
sorry.
blaming Josh for
it.
things.
I just had to do that.
I know. So, so let's switch a little bit from sorghum to soybean.
Okay.
Couple years, I was fighting stink bugs
Absolutely.
horribly, and last year not so much.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
what gives?
Wait,
No,
'cause,
all right,
I
we
mean,
got our answer.
if I could predicted that, I would have, contacted all the companies that we had set up to do stink bug trials and said, they're not going to be here this year. Let's look at this because this is what's showing up. And we were ready to go for stink bugs, and they just didn't show up. And the thing is, in Perkins, they got, you still got pecans. Stink bugs love pecans, so we just figured that was going to be a good source of stink bugs coming into our soybean, and that was like the perfect place to do a stink bug trial. They didn't show up.
What do you think that? Because based on our last years, we see a bulk majority of stink bugs come in mid-August through mid-September. That's when the 100 degrees was and the drought hit. Did that have anything to do with it, or?
I don't know.
And we also, we formed pods when we never formed seed, because that's what a stink bug will typically feed on is those developing seeds.
Right.
So, we just didn't form a whole lot of seeds this last year because we aborted so many pods. I don't know, but even in Bixby, where we typically have quite a few stink bug trials over in Bixby, we just didn't have stink bug numbers this year. We had them there. They were there. They were there usually at about 2 adults per 25 sweeps or something like that.
Right.
Really,
we'd send out our people to sweep the soybeans in Perkins, and we'd think, okay, there's a few eggs being laid, maybe, and then the next week nothing.
Well, when we saw that, we'd get nymphs. We'd get a whole pocket of nymphs form, and we'd figure, hey, we got this 10-acre block of soybean. It's gonna explode here. And then 2 weeks later, there was not a stink bug in the whole trial.
That's exactly what we saw in Perkins.
So what influences stink bug activity? It's another one, right? That does it overwinter here?
Oh yeah, they do. They overwinter, and a lot of times, I'd have to go back and look at, but I think even a lot of times they'll overwinter as mated adults, mated females, and they can start laying eggs right away. That kind of thing with the hemipterans, but and they overwinter in protected areas. Yeah. They just fly off, and if you dig around in the litter near wooded areas and stuff, you can usually find them just waiting.
Question about overwintering, and this is probably an ignorant question. Is there any of these insects that we deal with that could overwinter for 2 years, or is it if they don't come out, it's an annual overwintering, or is there longevity in that?
The only ones that I know that overwinter more than 1 year are like wireworms, but they're overwintering. They're not. They're underground, so it takes them 6-7 years to go through a generation, or 17-year cicadas. They overwinter every year. But typically, most of them in this climate will probably go through a generation every year. If you get up farther north, I know in the Dakotas, sometimes a northern corn rootworm wouldn't hatch the following. The eggs wouldn't hatch the following year. They go through 2 years.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, so we had a couple years where I thought stink bugs were really bad. We had just getting worse. If they weren't that bad last year, my assumption would be we'd have less to overwinter. So while we may still blow up, the initial would be a lower population, even given good conditions. Or
Yeah.
is it?
Stink bugs, without looking at them all the time, they're going to go through cycles where they got natural enemies and disease and things and they cycle up and down just like any other insect we have. So
I also found it interesting. My first 4 years here, it was southern greens that we were dealing with. But then the last 2 years have been really big on browns.
Browns, yeah.
We have both of them throughout the
Yes,
state,
we do.
right? So
Yes.
what causes one? I mean, is there anything that causes one to be more prominent than the other, or just what shows up at the party first?
What you're doing is asking me questions that would be great for graduate student projects for years to come.
As long as we can get them mapped.
Yeah.
You gotta fly with a freaking drone.
Because I can't answer that. I don't know.
Well, I just thought,
Yeah.
when I first got here, I was,
Yeah.
coming from Louisiana, we have greens and browns and red banded, red shoulders and
Yeah,
rice
you
and all
got-
that. And then I was like, oh, we just have to deal with greens here. And then we swept a lot of trials and I never swept a brown up. And then the last 2 years, I'm not sweeping any greens up and I'm sweeping all browns. And I
Yeah.
don't know why. So it's an intriguing thing.
It is. It is.
But interesting enough, we have a lot more because we have we'll see red shouldered every once in a while. And we'll
I
see some
see
rice
them.
stink bug
Yeah.
every once in a while. And
And if you go into sorghum, you sometimes can see rice stink bug. They like sorghum.
so but the red shouldered one, not a big agronomic pest, right?
It's not, and I don't see a lot of them. I mean, I'll find, I've found them mixed in with mostly greens. Like you said, in the past few years, it's been the southern green that's been the biggie, and then a few red shoulders. We're always kind of concerned about. Let's see, there's the red shoulder. There's another one that you can get mixed up because one of them's more of a pest than the other. I don't remember.
Is that red banded?
Red banded,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I worked with that. I just hope
And
Arkansas
if
and
we
Louisiana
started
can
seeing
keep
red
those.
banded here, we would know where they came from.
No. I've been here enough. I didn't bring those.
That would be Josh.
But the last couple years ago, we had the marmorated stink bug.
And we have now found brown marmorated stink bug in Oklahoma a few times, I guess.
But it's hadn't been in our soybean.
No.
Has it? It's just been in trees, right?
It's more of a fruit feeding pest, and it's a big problem out in the East Coast, But
Yeah.
it's spreading just like everything else.
There was a mention of resistance.
Yes.
And, we talk about with the weed scientists how there's not any new formulations or modes of actions and all that stuff. What about on the insect side of things? Have we seen new modes of action? I mean, what's the outlook for that kind of stuff on the chemical versus, biotech genetic side of things, in your opinion?
We are seeing a few new modes of action. We have a lot of modes of action, but some of them are being taken away. Some of the older ones, like chlorpyrifos was an organophosphate, and they're pretty much getting to the point of disappearing. And they're effective, but they have their issues, and that's just the way it is. The latest thing I saw. I'm going to be talking to someone down at our Southwest Branch entomology meetings about. I'll have to dig into it more detail, and maybe come back and talk about it another time. But it's a whole new type of insecticide that it's a biological, but it's a biotech kind of thing too, and. He wanted to talk to me about it at the meetings. He's emailed me to say he'd like to talk about it a little bit.
I think I've heard of similar. It was a couple of years ago. It's like there's been chatter about this new technology ever since Post was even here. I think when Post was here, we were talking about it, both insects and weeds. And there was going to be very directed, down to very specific,
right? Yeah.
Phenotypes and genetics.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've seen over the years that I've worked with insecticides is that they've become more narrow in their impact. They don't affect some of the OPs just wipe out everything. You spray them and they wipe out everything, and we've gotten more and more narrow targets. Most of the insecticides today are more narrowly targeted one way or the other.
Yeah, and that's really, I mean, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I think
to have
so.
more targeted products, because like Milo's always fun. I like growing Milo, and it's always fun to go out there after it's headed and is starting to find finish grain. There's all these beneficials and all, and I don't know if they do any good or not. Like spiders and whatever and wasps, but if there's something out there that you've got to kill and you wipe all that out, it just seems tragic to me.
Yeah, and that actually Chris Giles and Norm Elliott got an area-wide project where they're going to be really focused on looking at natural enemies and how they impact things, especially the sugarcane aphid and a few other things. So, over the next couple of years, they're going to have a lot of things to say about what's going on with natural enemies in sorghum.
Well, I still remember interviewing you years ago, and we were I forget what crop we were out talking about, but you saw a wasp out there, and you said we don't need to do an application of whatever out on this field because that natural enemy was out there taking care of it. And I thought that totally changed my thought direction whenever it comes to insects, because before it was, wasps, what do? They just go around and sting people. No, they actually are actually taking care of other insects out there, and it's a totally different way, a different approach to insect control, natural enemies.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we've said a lot that the next sector of IPM is that biological,
it is
biotech, and you think entomology is one that it can kind of run a lot from, because it's where we see a lot of these new products coming on, or either enhancing by natural enemies that are out there, or like you said, providing spores out there of a fungus or something that would typically attack.
Well, you've seen the products that the viruses that attack corn earworm and that kind of thing. Those are I saw a field in Woodward that was pretty impressive.
Yeah,
it had wiped out the headworms in that field. They put it on at the right time, and you'd go out there and walk around, and you'd find a bunch of dead headworms at the top of plants, and they were spreading their spores out continually. Yep. They got it started, and so those kind of things are
that always
cool.
Intrigued me. Their reaction to getting the virus was to come up top and die standing up. That was just crazy.
On that virus, so that's for the headworm on Milo.
Yes.
Correct. What does it have any efficacy on earworm? If you like in corn?
I think so. It would be part of the issue with corn is that it's more protected. The sorghum head's open.
Yeah.
And the earworms get in under the husk and it'd be a little more protected, but
because that's another product that is very specific to that worm.
Yeah. Yeah. And like it only work for, armyworm for wheat just because it's less successful is what I've been understanding is the way they move, and the headworm is more cannibalistic. There's a lot of different things there that make it work so well.
So you're saying that the worm gets the virus and then crawls to the top of the plant,
yes,
and then stands up and dies, and then the spores
go, or if there's other caterpillars on that, they'll eat the dead one.
The damn worm.
Yeah.
That's dumb. I didn't know that.
That's the reason a lot of times in a corn in sweet corn you'll only find one earworm because it's killed all the other ones that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're very cannibalistic. If you put them in a little arena like an MMA arena, they'll kill each other.
And even field corn, you generally find just one worm per ear. Huh?
Right.
Next time on Red Dirt Agronomy.
Unless you'll find little, sometimes when you go out there, you might find a couple small ones.
Yes.
But by the time
they're avoiding. Yeah, they're avoiding somehow.
I just see Scooby-Doo, like the whole Scooby-Doo scenes in my head with corn earworms.
Tom is just an encyclopedia. I think this has been the very most informative one that we've done so far, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's something. It is the most something.
Yeah.
Anything else, Tom, that is exciting that you wanted to hit on that we have?
I'm looking forward to working with you this summer to get plugged into some sorghum field days if I can.
According to Jason, just follow me around, and that's where all the pests are. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we could just get them mapped.
And if we could just get the
mapped.
grain in the ground.
I'm just going to have a drone tied to Jason where it follows his watch, and we just have a series of them. So we just have a
just
swarm of
hovers
drones.
about
yeah, just hovers over
15
his
feet
head.
above him.
Yeah. That way you guys can learn what I learn every day. And then we won't
The
have
world
to
would
have
be a
such
better
long
place.
conversations for me to
Well,
educate
I
you.
just was thinking about the visual thing. If you had a drone, you could literally map those dark areas where.
Well, yeah,
that'd
I
be
never
interesting
thought
to
about
see
that.
how
I was
that.
just a damn aggravated. I mean, because it was. I mean, you see one head with 1,000 bugs on it, and then there's 100 heads all around them, and then every time you go out there, they move.
We
It's
find
just-
a couple fields this year, and we'll get some
That'd be
high
cool.
resolution drone stuff. I've got you covered.
Good.
That'd be fun to see.
right.
That'd be fun to see.
Thank you for listening in on this conversation on the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. And if you would like to join the conversation, just send us an email, podcast@reddirtagronomy.com, or send us a tweet. Our handle is reddirtag. We would also like to thank Oklahoma State University Extension entomologist Dr. Tom Royer for joining us this week on the podcast. To find any of the resources that we talked about today, visit reddirtagronomy.com. There you will find show notes, or you can listen to past episodes too. For Dr. Josh Lofton, Dr. Jason Warren, and Dr. Brian Ernell, I am Dave Deacon, and we would all like to thank you for listening. The proceeding is a copyrighted recording of Agnow Media LLC 2022. And yes, all rights are reserved.